I am Charles, 70 years old, and I never imagined my own family would try to kill me at my retirement party. I've spent a lifetime reading people as a business consultant and built a $23 million company from scratch. I thought I understood human nature. Last night proved me wrong. They threw a celebration at my house to mark the sale of my firm. There were champagne toasts and warm congratulations. Then my daughter-in-law, Linda, leaned in with a practiced smile and handed me a glass. "Charles, you look tired," she said. "Here, have some champagne. You've earned it." I took the glass and watched her face. That's the moment I felt something was terribly off. If you're watching this later, subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. And before I go further, let me be clear. I didn't survive 70 years or a ruthless business world by being foolish. When someone tries to poison you at your own party, you notice, especially when that person has been eyeing your bank account the way a starving person watches a banquet. Just 2 hours earlier, my kitchen was full of laughter. My son, Thomas, had insisted on hosting. "Dad, you deserve to celebrate," he'd said, those sincere brown eyes of his working overtime. "Let Linda handle everything. You just relax." That should have been my first warning. Linda rarely offers to load a dishwasher, and suddenly she was arranging flowers and polishing crystal like Martha Stewart. She carried the evening as if her life depended on it, and as it turned out, it probably did. About 30 people came, former colleagues, a few neighbors, and family. Linda even hired a bartender. "Nothing's too good for you, Charles," she gushed, squeezing my arm with those perfectly manicured nails that cost more than most people's weekly groceries. While I chatted with my former business partner, I saw it. Linda at the champagne table, scanning the room, then quietly pulling a small vial from her purse. My blood went cold as she emptied the contents into a single glass, the one with the tiny chip on the rim that I always use at parties. A sensible person might have shouted for help, called the police, or confronted her on the spot. But I've learned it's often better to let a snake think it has trapped a mouse. So I smiled, nodded as my partner droned on about market trends, and kept watching. Linda picked up the doctored champagne and walked toward me wearing a mask of concern. I took the glass, thanked her, and waited. About 10 minutes later, when she drifted off to show her new tennis bracelet to the neighbors, I quietly switched my glass with the one near her mother, Margaret. A bit scattered. Poor Margaret. She was standing by her purse, looking like she needed a drink. She reached for the nearest glass, the one I'd just set down. Within 5 minutes, Margaret was praising the champagne's interesting flavor and asking if I'd found it somewhere special. Then things moved fast. The glass slipped from Linda's hand the moment Margaret hit the floor. Margaret began convulsing on my marble kitchen tiles, foam gathering at her mouth. My first thought was brutally simple. This was not meant for her. I knelt beside Margaret while Linda screamed for someone to call 911. Her performance of shock was almost convincing. Almost. The problem for a murderer is that real panic and staged panic look different if you know what to watch for. What happened? Thomas pushed through the crowd, face pale. And I saw it. A quick glance he shot at Linda, just a fraction too long. "I don't know," Linda sobbed, clutching my arm. She just collapsed. 1 minute she was fine, the next, she gestured helplessly at Margaret, now unconscious but still breathing. Thank God. Paramedics arrived within minutes. As they loaded Margaret onto the stretcher, I studied my son's face. 32 years of fatherhood had taught me to read him. He looked like a man watching carefully laid plans collapse in real time. "Which hospital?" I asked a paramedic. "St. Mary's. Are you family?" "Close friend," I said, glancing at Linda, who was too busy hyperventilating to notice. "I'll follow in my car." Thomas stepped in quickly. "Dad, you don't have to. We'll handle everything. You should stay here. Clean up from the party." How thoughtful. Keep the target at home while they figured out what went wrong. "Nonsense," I said. "Margaret is practically family. I'm coming." At the hospital, I stayed close enough to overhear the staff. Margaret's condition, acute poisoning, cause unknown. A doctor mentioned plant alkaloids to a nurse. Someone had researched untraceable toxins. In the waiting area, Linda paced, her designer heels clicking on the linoleum like a metronome for her nerves. Thomas sat rigidly, phone buzz after buzz, reluctant to answer. "This is terrible," Linda said for the 5th time. "Poor Mom." I can't understand how this happened. I patted her shoulder. These things can be mysterious. I'm sure the doctors will sort it out. I let a beat pass. It's fortunate she didn't drink more of that champagne. She only had a few sips before she collapsed. She faltered. Champagne? You think the champagne caused this? I'm sure it's nothing, I said, waving it off. Just an old man connecting dots. But her face went a shade paler, and her hand shook as she lifted her coffee. Thomas watched us like a hawk. 3 hours later, a doctor said Margaret was stable but would stay overnight. Tests are inconclusive, but whatever she ingested is working its way out. Can we see her? Linda asked. Family only, and she sedated. Come back tomorrow. Thomas walked me to my car. Dad, maybe you should stay with us tonight. After this, I'd feel better if you weren't alone. How considerate. If Margaret's collapse had them worried that I suspected anything, they wanted me where they could manage me. That's sweet, I said, but I'll be fine. I got that new security system, remember? I kissed his cheek, then watched in my mirror as he and Linda argued in urgent whispers. Back home, I poured a real glass of champagne from a fresh bottle and settled into my study. Time to decide what to do about my loving family. I spent the night doing the kind of research that doesn't require a computer, just good memory and a suspicious mind. Margaret's poisoning wasn't random. Someone wanted me dead, likely hoping it would look like a heart attack or stroke. At 70, people don't question those endings. But why now? That was the $23 million question. At 5 a.m., I made coffee and spread out a legal pad. Thomas's architectural firm had struggled for years, and Linda's boutique jewelry shop was more hobby than business. They lived beyond their means, mortgage on that ridiculous Westfield house, a BMW and a Mercedes not paid off, and Linda's shopping habits could fund a small nation's school budget. I'd helped, of course. What father wouldn't? A few thousand here and there. A down payment when Linda cried about the right neighborhood. Private school tuition for Ashley when public schools weren't good enough. Looking at my records, I'd given them nearly $200,000 over the past 5 years. Gifts, I called them. Now I wondered if they saw those not as generosity, but as advances on an inheritance they didn't want to wait for. At 7:30, Linda called. Charles, I couldn't sleep, she said, voice heavy with concern. After what happened to Mom, I'm worried maybe something was wrong with the food or drinks. You didn't feel sick, did you? How thoughtful to check whether her poison found the intended target. Not at all. Feel fine. Any news about Margaret? The doctors think she can go home today. Maybe she ate something that didn't agree with her. You know how she is with medications. Probably took something on an empty stomach. Margaret isn't careless with medication. She organizes pills like a quartermaster. That's a relief, I said. I worried it might be something at the party. That would be awful. Oh no, definitely not, she answered quickly. The doctors were very clear it wasn't food poisoning. Just one of those things. Interesting how fast she wanted to shut down any look at what happened in my house. Almost as if she worried someone might test the remaining champagne. After hanging up, I eyed the open bottle from last night, still 3/4 full on my counter. A lab could tell me what I already knew. Evidence might be useful. At 9, the doorbell rang. Thomas, carrying pastries from my favorite bakery, looking the picture of a concerned son. Thought you might want breakfast, he said. We made coffee and sat. Watching him move around my kitchen stirred a sadness in me. When had the boy who brought me dandelions turned into a man who stood by while his wife tried to murder me? How are you holding up? He asked. Oh, you know me takes more than a little excitement to rattle these old bones. He smiled without his eyes. That's what I was afraid of. Odd choice of words. He cleared his throat. I've been talking with Linda about your situation. My situation? You're 70, Dad. Alone in a big house. All that money from the sale. He gestured. It's a lot to manage. There it was, the setup. I appreciate your concern, I said lightly. I've managed well so far. Have you, though? He leaned forward. Yesterday with Margaret. What if that had been you? What if no one found you for hours? The audacity. Use their failed murder attempt as an argument that I need protecting. Thomas, I said evenly. Margaret collapsed at a party with 30 witnesses. Paramedics came in minutes. That's not what I meant. He ran a hand through his hair. A tell from his teenage years. We've been researching communities for active seniors, places with people around and medical staff on site, the nursing home pitch. How convenient they'd already researched options. How thoughtful, I said. What do you have in mind? He showed me a glossy site. Sunrise Gardens. Only 20 minutes from our house. We could visit all the time. Golf, a spa, cultural activities. It's more like a resort. I studied photos of smiling people doing water aerobics. Likely very peaceful. Perhaps heavily medicated. There is one thing, he added, usually a waiting list. If someone wants to move in quickly, they pay the full entrance fee up front. It's significant, about $400,000, but it covers housing, meals, medical care for life. $400,000 would take a nice bite out of my liquid assets. And once I was tucked away, who would have power of attorney over the remaining $22 million? Who would make decisions about my care and money? It sounds lovely, I said, but I'm happy here. This house holds many memories of your mother. Dad, Mom's been gone 15 years. Don't you think it's time to start a new chapter? If I hadn't witnessed the poison, I might have found his concern touching. Instead, it chilled me. I'll think about it, I said. It's a big decision. Of course, he said, relieved. We could visit next week. Maybe. I stood to clear dishes. I should call Margaret today. Make sure she's better. Actually, he said, Linda asked me to tell you Margaret needs rest. The doctor said visitors may be too stimulating. How convenient. Keep me away from the victim until the evidence clears her system. After Thomas left, I thought about timing. They waited until after I sold the company. Smart. If I died 6 months ago, my $23 million would have gone to Thomas under my will anyway. But now, if they could craft a narrative about my declining capacity, they could challenge any recent changes to my estate. My attorney, Ronald Hartwell, returned my call. Ronald has been with me 20 years, through my wife's death. The rise of my business, every major decision. Calm, precise, and exactly the lawyer you want when you suspect your family wants you dead. In his 15th floor office, I told him everything. The party, Margaret's collapse, Thomas's visit. You're certain about what you saw? He asked. As certain as sitting in this chair. The problem is proving intent, he said. Linda could claim she added something harmless, supplement, flavoring, unless we test the remaining champagne. Then let's test it. Even then, he continued, we can't prove she intended to kill you specifically. She could claim it targeted someone else. And if they can't kill me, they may try legal routes, he added. Competency challenges. Guardianship. Once they control your person, they control your assets. The nursing home push made new sense. Get me isolated. Produce records of confusion. Pay the right evaluator. What do I do? I asked. First, document your mental state, he said. I'll arrange a geriatric psychiatrist to evaluate competency immediately. Then we adjust your estate planning, trust structures, medical directives, financial safeguards, and automatic audits if anyone touches your accounts without authorization. He paused. One more thing. Personal safety. If they tried once, they'll try again. He recommended security. I agreed. The next morning at 8, a security company installed cameras, motion sensors, and a panic button system that could summon police in under 3 minutes. I told the neighbors it was for package theft. By afternoon, my house was more secure than a jewelry store. At 2, a messenger delivered my updated will, trusts, and medical directives, properly witnessed and notarized. If Thomas and Linda wanted my money, they would wait and get far less. My new plan reduced Thomas's inheritance from everything to a trust paying $50,000 a year for life, comfortable, but not enough for their current lifestyle. The bulk would go to cancer research with smaller amounts to charities. Linda would receive nothing. The doorbell rang. On my monitor, Thomas and Linda, both looking grim. They noticed the new camera. Package theft, I said lightly. In my living room, Linda doubted her eyes. We feel awful about the party. If something we brought caused Mom to get sick, I'm sure it wasn't anything you brought, I said. But what if it was? Thomas leaned forward. What if the champagne or food was bad? Dad, I'd never forgive myself. And then the pivot. We think it might be better if we took care of you for a while, Linda said. You could stay with us. That's thoughtful, I said. But I'm safe here. Are you? Linda's tone sharpened. You're 70, living alone. What if something happens and no one finds you for days? You're right, I said. Anything could happen at my age. That's why I updated my will today. The temperature dropped 10 degrees. Your will? Linda asked neutrally. Yes. Amazing how a brush with mortality, someone else's even, clarifies things. Thomas went pale. What kind of updates? Oh, minor adjustments to reflect my current priorities. Silence. Their minds were racing. They left soon after, then sat in their car outside for 10 minutes arguing. Linda made a phone call, gesturing angrily while Thomas tried and failed to take the phone. The next morning, an unexpected visitor, Margaret, pale but determined. Charles, we need to talk, she said. About the other night. I made tea. She looked tired but alert, more coherent than Linda wanted me to think. Linda says I had a reaction to medication, she began. But I don't take any medications except vitamins. Haven't for years. Tell me what you remember, I said. Everything until the dizziness, she replied. The champagne tasted bitter, almost metallic. Earlier, I saw Linda at the drinks table with a small bottle, like an eyedropper. My pulse quickened. Why do you think she targeted me? Margaret gave a bitter laugh. She's been talking about your money for months. How unfair it is you have so much and they struggle. Last month, she asked if you'd updated your will. She's been fixated on Thomas's inheritance. She deserved the truth, and I needed an ally. Margaret, I saw Linda put something in my glass, I said. I switched our drinks. Her color drained. She tried to kill you, and I almost died instead. What are you going to do? She asked. I'm going to give them exactly what they want, just not the way they expect. She raised an eyebrow. Meaning? Me and your daughter and my son are about to learn that some games carry a higher price than they imagined. After Margaret left, I called Patricia Williams, an old business contact who runs a private investigations firm. I need to know everything about my son's finances, I said. Bank accounts, loans, investments, credit cards, everything. Give me 48 hours, Patricia said. Meanwhile, I asked Thomas to lunch at our old spot, the place of his milestones. He arrived nervous, checking his phone. I've been thinking about what you and Linda said. I told him about safety, planning for the future. His face brightened. And I think you're right. It's time to make changes. What kind of changes? I called Sunrise Gardens. They have an opening, but it must be filled quickly. Someone else is interested in the same unit. How quickly? Next week. I'd need to pay the entrance fee by Friday. He could barely contain himself. That's not a problem, right? You have the money from the sale. Of course, I said. It's just a big step. I thought you and Linda could help with the paperwork. Make sure I do it right. Absolutely. There's one more thing, I added. They require a power of attorney on file, someone to make decisions if I can't. I was hoping you'd be willing. Of course, Dad. Perfect. He thought he was winning. On Thursday, Patricia called back. It was worse than I'd guessed. They were leveraged to the hilt. The house refinanced 3 times, 2 mortgages, a maxed-out home equity line, credit card debt over $80,000. Thomas's business had been losing money for 2 years. They'd been using one card to pay another. Then the kicker. 6 months ago, Linda took out a $500,000 life insurance policy on me with her as beneficiary. She claimed insurable interest as my daughter-in-law and caregiver. I felt my stomach ice over. There was more. For 3 months, Thomas had been making regular payments to Dr. Richard Steinberg, a geriatric psychiatrist. I called my attorney. Steinberg? Ronald said. He has a reputation for being accommodating in competency evaluations. Families hire him when they want a particular outcome. So the plan was complete. Get me into Sunrise Gardens under care, use a broad power of attorney to access my accounts, and if I objected, have Dr. Steinberg declare me incompetent. If I had not seen Linda poison that glass, I might have been trapped neatly. That afternoon, Thomas and Linda arrived with a briefcase for Sunrise Gardens. They spread papers across my dining room table like field marshals. The admission contract, the financial disclosure listing all assets, and a power of attorney just in case. In truth, it granted immediate control over my accounts and decisions. This seems broad, I said. Just a precaution, Thomas replied. At your age, it's good to have someone younger handle complicated financial stuff. At my age, again. What if I change my mind? I asked. Can I revoke this? They exchanged a quick glance. Technically, yes, Linda said carefully. But the facility has strict policies about residents who try to leave. Medical evaluations, waiting periods. It's complicated. Of course it was. I need to think overnight, I said, collecting the papers. Big decision. Remember? Thomas said. We must submit by tomorrow to hold the unit. I'll have an answer in the morning. Then I called Ronald. Prepare something for me. Ready by tomorrow. What kind of something? The kind that teaches a lesson they won't forget. Friday dawned gray and drizzling. Thomas and Linda arrived at 9 sharp, dressed like they were heading to a board meeting. Have you decided? Thomas asked, barely hiding his excitement. I have. I held up the Sunrise Gardens paperwork, now signed and notarized. You're right. It's time. Linda visibly relaxed. You'll love it. I also signed the power of attorney. I added. Thomas's hands trembled as he took the document. This is the right decision. I'm sure it is, I said. We spent an hour going over account numbers and access codes while Linda typed. Every few minutes, she and Thomas shared a furtive, gleeful glance. There's just one more step, I said. I need to sign additional paperwork with my attorney before final transfer, tax implications on large transactions. Do you want us to drive you? Thomas asked. Actually, he's coming here. Ronald should arrive any moment. The doorbell rang, right on cue. But it wasn't Ronald. Mark. Wilson. The woman at my door said, I'm Detective Lisa Morrison. We need to speak with you about a suspected poisoning at your home. What? Thomas blurted. The hospital's toxicology results show Margaret ingested oleander extract, the detective said. That's not medication. It's a deadly poison. We also tested the remaining champagne from that evening. The bottle opened for the party contained the same extract. Someone deliberately poisoned it. Linda went paper white. Why would I poison my own mother? She demanded. That's what we are trying to understand. The detective replied, especially since the champagne glass with the highest concentration appears to have been intended for Mr. Wilson. Thomas stared at Linda, horror dawning. There's something else, I said. Detective, show them the policy. She produced a document. MRS. Wilson, 6 months ago you took out a $500,000 life insurance policy on Mr. Wilson, naming yourself beneficiary. Linda whispered. This is insane. Charles, tell them this is insane. I saw you put poison in my glass, Linda, I said. I switched our drinks. Thomas's head snapped up. You knew? I've known for days. I also know about your finances, Dr. Steinberg, and the plan to have me declared incompetent. Thomas sagged. I didn't know about the poison, he said softly. I swear. But you knew about the rest, I said. His silence spoke for him. Linda Wilson, the detective said, you're under arrest for attempted murder. As they cuffed her, Linda glared at me. You think you're clever? You have no idea what you've done. On the contrary, I said, I know exactly what I've done. After the police left, Thomas sat in silence, staring at the scattered papers. She said this was about keeping you safe, he muttered. She said you were becoming forgetful, that you needed protection, and the money. She said if something happened naturally, we'd inherit enough to start over. How convenient that natural causes needed help, I said. Tears welled. I'm sorry, Dad. I never wanted to hurt you. Show me your phone, I said. Your texts with Linda from the past week. He hesitated, then handed it over. The messages were damning. Did you talk to Dad about Sunrise Gardens? Yes, he's considering it. Good. The sooner we get him moved, the better. He's been asking too many questions about our finances. What if he changes his mind? He won't. Not after tomorrow night. What's tomorrow night? Trust me. By Sunday, he'll be begging us to take care of him. I returned his phone. You knew she planned something for the party. I thought she'd scare you, he said. Stage a break-in. Not this. You were comfortable with the idea of staging my accident to push me into Sunrise Gardens, I said. And there's more. A private investigator looked into your finances. his face drained. What did you find? Everything, I said. Debt, a failing business, years of living beyond your means, and payments to Dr. Steinberg. I can explain. Can you? You paid him for 3 months before you ever talked to me about Sunrise Gardens. What exactly was he supposed to find Thomas? He buried his face in his hands. A backup plan, he said. If you refuse to sign the power of attorney, Steinberg would evaluate you. Linda said it was just in case. Your plan from the start, I said, was to have me declared incompetent if necessary. Only if we had to, he whispered. One more thing, I said. Those power of attorney papers you think you have? They're fake. Ronald prepared a set just for this meeting. They give you authority over a bank account containing exactly $1. Thomas stared. What? My real money is protected in trusts you can't touch. The new will leaves you a modest annual income and nothing more. If you're convicted of conspiracy in Linda's plot, even that disappears. You've destroyed my life, he said. No, Thomas. You destroyed your own. I merely refused to let you destroy mine. What I felt wasn't victory. It was a deep, weary sadness for the man he had become. 3 months later, I sat in my garden watching roses my wife planted 20 years ago. Linda received 15 years for attempted murder. Thomas got 3 years for conspiracy, reduced by a good lawyer. My granddaughter Ashley, 16, called last night crying. Grandpa Charles, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. She asked to visit this summer. I told her yes gladly. She didn't deserve any of this. Margaret and I now meet for coffee twice a week. 2 people bonded by family betrayal. She's considering a book about elder abuse, using our experience as a warning. You realize how close they came? She asked recently. They never had a chance, I said. I've dealt with people who want my money for 45 years. The difference this time was the DNA. My doorbell rang. On the monitor, Ronald, carrying a briefcase and looking pleased. Good news, he said in my living room. The insurer won't contest Linda's policy on your life. Since she was convicted of attempting to murder you, they're voiding the policy and returning all premiums. He continued, Thomas's creditors are seizing his assets. That includes the house you helped them buy. Do you want to make an offer? I imagine their house, granite counters, cathedral ceilings, beautiful things they couldn't afford. No, I said. Let someone honest buy it. One last item, he said, handing me a document. Your trust restructuring is complete. Your money is protected in perpetuity. No one can access it without your explicit written consent. If anyone attempts to have you declared incompetent, the trust automatically transfers to charity. Thank you, Ronald. After he left, I poured a glass of wine and watched the sunset turn the sky gold and pink. At 70, I've learned that money can bring out the best and the worst in people. In my family, it drew out the worst. But I learned something else too. Age doesn't mean powerlessness. I was sharp enough to see the play, tough enough to stop it, and resilient enough to build new routines without the people who betrayed me. My phone buzzed. A text from Ashley. Grandpa, I got accepted to Northwestern pre-law, just like you suggested. Can't wait to tell you everything when I visit. I smiled and typed back. Congratulations, sweetheart. I'm so proud of you. Maybe that's the real victory, not only stopping Thomas and Linda, but making sure the next generation chooses better. Ashley will understand that money is a tool, not the goal. Family should mean support and love, not exploitation and greed. I opened by telling you about a failed poisoning at my retirement party. But the real story is the difference between being old and being powerless. I may be 70, but I am far from powerless. Anyone who tests it will learn, as Thomas and Linda did, that underestimating a sharp old man is an expensive mistake. Sometimes the best revenge is living well and ensuring the people who tried to wrong you don't profit from it. I've done both. I'll sleep just fine. Money reveals character. Age doesn't equal weakness. 45 years in business taught me to read people and protect what matters. The greatest win isn't just stopping betrayal. It's making sure the next generation knows that family means support, not exploitation. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you have a story of your own, share it in the comments. Your voice matters.